The Visistadvaita school of Vedanta philosophy, which is founded by Ramanuja, believes in the concept of Brahma-Parinamavada. Brahma-Parinamavada says the effect necessarily pre-exists in the cause. This basically means both matter and soul necessarily pre-exist in the cause, that is Brahman. So in a way, Ramanuja says that both matter and soul are the attributes of Brahman. But now the question arises, what is the nature of Cit and Acit, that is matter and soul, and how are the two related to each other if they are? Here I would like to bring to your notice that in Indian philosophy, the concept of bondage and liberation is always associated with absence of knowledge, that is ignorance or avidya. Now, when Ramanuja says that both Cit and Acit are the two attributes of Brahman, then how is bondage and liberation possible, and is there a way out? So these are some of the questions that we will discuss in this video, and we will also discuss the famous criticism expounded by Ramanuja towards Shankara's, that is Advaita Vedanta's theory, that is the refutation of Maya. Beginning with the concept of Jiva, according to Ramanuja, Jiva or soul or Cit is eternal, real substance which is completely dependent on God. This basically means Jiva is a prakara or an attribute of God and is a part of God. Yet it is real and spiritual in nature. It is atomic in size and innumerable. And that is why he believes that qualitative monism and quantitative pluralism is how we can describe the concept of soul. According to him, the soul is both self-luminous and self-conscious in nature. So, consciousness is the essence of the soul. The soul is the karta, bhokta and the nyata. During the process of creation, the jiva is attached to the body due to the presence of karmas of the past lives. While in the state of disillusion, it is associated with the karmas which one will reap in the next life. And finally, in the state of liberation, all the karmic particles are removed and the soul goes back to being ever blissful. That is, it goes back to being the attribute of God. Although God is the inner controller of the soul, that is, God is the nyata, yet, according to Ramanuja, the soul has the freedom of will as per which it performs its actions and accumulates the karmas. According to Ramanuja, there are three classes for soul: Nitya-Mukta, Mukta and Baddha. Nitya-Mukta, as the two words themselves describe, Nitya is eternal and Mukta is free. So, they are the eternally free souls or ever liberated souls. They live in the Vaikuntha, that is the abode of the God, for example, Shesha Garud. The second is Mukta, which are called the freed souls which were once bound. But now they are free. They are free from all the karmic particles. Lastly are the Baddha. Baddha are the bound souls which are still wandering in samsara due to the karmas and ignorance. They are further divided into four classes: superhuman, human, animal and immobile. Next, we have the concept of matter, that is Acit. According to Ramanuja, the concept of matter or Acit is a real, eternal substance which is entirely dependent on God, as we have read before. He says there are three types of Acit: Nitya-Vibhuti, which is also called Shuda-Sattva. This is made up of pure Sattva, for example, Vaikuntha, the abode of Lord Vasudeva. It is immaterial in nature because it is not mutable and it does not change. It is ajada. According to Ramanuja, the liberated souls are made up of Nitya-Vibhuti. Second is Prakrti, which is called Mishra-Sattva. This is what the samsara is made up of. it possesses the three gunas, which is the sattva, rajas and the tamas. As we would know, the Prakrti, which is a combination of these three gunas, undergoes change and it is entirely dependent on God, and which is why it is Jada. The third is Kala or time. It is another unconscious type of matter like Prakrti we have just read. It is also entirely dependent on God and it undergoes change, which is why it is also Jada and not Ajada. Now, after having understood the two concepts of Cit and Acit in detail, we will now understand the relation between the two, and via that we will understand the concept of bondage and liberation. According to Ramanuja, bondage in soul is due to the association of the soul with the body, that is the senses, life, mind, due to the presence of karmas or the doings of our previous lives. And this all happens because of the presence of ignorance in one's life. Now, Ramanuja says the relation of association of soul with karma is beginningless, but it can surely be ended. The way out, according to him, is only via the means of ordinary bhakti or devotion and upasana or meditation, which will help one realize the pure jnana, that is the highest knowledge of God, which is immediate and intuitive in nature. This immediate and intuitive nature of knowledge is the knowledge of God, which is only possible via the highest bhakti, and this whole process is possible because of the grace of the God. So, first we have ordinary bhakti. From ordinary bhakti, we go towards higher bhakti, and from higher bhakti, we go towards liberation. And this process is only possible because of the grace of God. So, according to him, ordinary bhakti leads to higher bhakti and finally leads to liberation, which is only possible with the grace of God. Now, liberation, according to him, is not a union or merging of the individual soul with God. Rather, liberation, according to Ramanuja, is understood as a realization regarding the nature of God, Cit and Acit. So, this realization is gained by the individual soul, which means to say that liberation is the knowledge where one realizes that God and Cit and Acit are the two modes or attributes of God or the two parakra of gods. So, liberation is nothing but the realization of the similarity between the liberated souls and God, that is Brahma Prakara. Here, Ramanuja points out that liberation is only possible when there is a complete cessation of karmas and ignorance which is accumulated by our past lives. Secondly, divine grace dawns from God, because of which the highest bhakti is possible. Highest bhakti, according to him, is bhakti or devotion with upasana or meditation on God. So, we can say that he believes in the concept of Jivan Mukti and not Videha Mukti, because as long as the soul remains embodied, the karmic particles will never dissolve and the soul will never really attain liberation or attain the Brahma Prakara knowledge. The last concept that we will deal with is the refutation of Maya. Now, before we understand the refutation of Maya by Ramanuja, it is important to understand the concept of Maya in the first place. The concept of Maya is advocated by Advaita Vedanta school of Shankaracharya. Ramanuja has a problem in understanding the way Maya has been detailed in Advaita Vedanta philosophy, and as a result, he rejects Shankara's concept of Maya by advocating 7 strong charges against his theory of Maya. The 7 charges are also called 7 Anupapattis. They are: first is Ashrayanupapatti. Now, Ramanuja questions, where does ignorance exist? It can neither exist in Brahman, for he is pure consciousness, nor in Jiva, for Jiva is taken by Shankara to be its creation, that is, it is a creation of Brahman. So he poses the question as to where does ignorance exist. The second is Tirodhananupapatti. Here, Ramanuja questions, If ignorance or Maya or Avidya conceals Brahman, then Brahman's self-revealing nature is not possible, which is advocated by Advaita Vedanta in his philosophy. The third is Svarupabupapatti. Here, the question is, what is the nature of ignorance? He raises this question because it cannot be positive, for it is avidya, and avidya is something which is a limitation and can be corrected or removed by knowledge. Then, if it is negative, then how can it be projected as illusion in the presence of Brahman? Ramanuja says it cannot be both positive and negative, for that leads to a self-contradiction. It also cannot be neither positive nor negative, for that is something very illogical in nature. So basically, he is here questioning the nature of ignorance and is not happy with how Advaita Vedanta philosophy explains it. The fourth is Anirvachniyatvanupapatti. Here, Ramanuja questions that Shankara describes avidya as something which is indescribable. He says, how can an indescribable thing be described? That is a clear case of self-contradiction. The fifth is Pramanaupapatti. Here, the question raised is, how can avidya or Maya be known? Because it is not possible by perception, inference, authority of scriptures or other means of knowledge. So basically, Ramanuja is questioning that how can avidya be ever known? The sixth objection is Nivrtyanupapatti. Ramanuja questions, there is no remover of avidya because, according to Shankara, Brahman is unqualified, undetermined, attributeless, basically Nirguna Brahman, and anything without any attributes or qualification has basically no identity. So, since Brahman cannot remove ignorance, there is no other way of how avidya or ignorance can ever be removed. Lastly, Nivrtyanupapatti. There is no way to remove avidya because, according to Shankara, it is positive, that is bhava-rupa, and nothing positive can ever be removed, is questioned by Ramanuja. Question 1. Superhuman, human, animal and immobile are the four classes of? The correct answer is Baddha. Baddha are the bound souls which are still wandering in samsara due to the presence of karmas and ignorance. Question 2. Prakrti, Kala and Nitya-Vibhuti are the three types of? The correct answer is Acit, that is matter. Lastly, liberation is nothing but realization of Brahma-Prakara is true according to? The correct answer is Ramanuja, B. Ramanuja says liberation is nothing but the realization of the similarity between the liberated soul and God, that is called Brahma-Prakara.